First and foremost, thank you all for showing up on a beautiful Friday morning. And big thanks on behalf of Rebecca and then all of the crew behind Creative Mornings here in Sacramento that put this absolutely amazing event together. I was here last month just to kind of take it all in because I was asked to do this a couple of months ago. So I wanted to take it in and see what it was all about. And I was really blown away with just like the culture and the community that is created within this space. And it made me quite nervous, I'll be very honest. I've got the perfect mixture of, perspiration, sweaty palms. I've been to the bathroom about, 15 times this morning, so I think I should be all right. Yeah, I've just kind of sweat the rest out. So Rebecca kind of said it all, so thank you very much. Yeah, I'm all done. No, so we'll keep moving. On to the first slide. And I am a total creative, and I speak on tangents, but I promise you that I will generally make my way back around. And I've got some notes back here, which are very unlike me, to try to keep myself a little bit more linearly. But I definitely think as a creative and an artistic, you don't want to stay on that linear path for too long. You need to kind of divulge and see what's, down the other paths, because, what's down the other path can definitely lead you to a better place sometimes. So, starting off, Adam Federico. I'm a hairdresser. I've been in the industry for 22 years. I went through my family's cosmetology school here in Sacramento back in the mid-90s, which is Federico Beauty Institute. Upon completion of school, I moved down to Southern California to continue my learning and my growth within just kind of like call it my academic career. I was a student who always struggled through high school. If it wasn't for my mom, I probably would have not made it through high school. I probably honestly would have dropped out. I always was a kid who struggled through basic academic learning. Once I was offered some sort of creative art and music through high school, it's kind of what kept me in it. And that's when Sacramento High School had the VAPAC program. So if any of you guys are Sacramento, like kind of locals natives, you'll remember back in the 90s they had the VAPAC, which is Visual and Performing Arts. And I took a lot of music classes and just art and photography. And it got me to showing up to school rather than skipping school and going skateboarding and playing music. Because that was definitely where my brain was at rather than showing up. And it was just kind of about hanging out with friends and so forth. I'm already going down one of those tangents. So anyway, so back to it. So upon completion of beauty school, see now we're back ahead. I moved down to Southern California just to kind of further my career, and I worked for a really great salon group down there, and I studied with the Vidal Sassoon Academy quite a bit while I was down there and so forth. I remember distinctly calling my mom and my dad one day and saying, hey, I'm kind of done with Los Angeles. I'm thinking about moving to Seattle. They're like, Seattle? I've never been to Seattle at that time. And they're like, Seattle, why? I'm like, because it's the mid-90s and music was hot. And I was like, cool. And they're like, well, before you make any rash decisions, because it's, kind of the train of thought sometimes, why don't you come home? I think it was scheduled or planning to come home. Why don't you come home for the weekend? We would like to talk to you about something. So I went home and they presented this concept and this idea to me saying, hey, why don't you come home? And we've been wanting to, open a salon, but because, they're so engulfed within the school aspect of the industry, it's really hard to kind of take this and then focus on something new. And now that I was in the industry, you can run the salon and you can take it and you can create it and develop it and put whatever type of concept you want behind it. And I was like 22 years old at that time. I mean, for a 22-year-old, like, wow, that sounds really cool, yeah? And they're like, just come and give us, a year or two, whatever you want, and then you can venture off and go back down your path. Yeah, they knew exactly what they were doing. So, I moved back home after about living in Los Angeles for about 3 years, and I went back into the school while we were in creation of the salon, and I began to teach. I was I was a virgin to the industry, if you will. I was 22 years old at that point, only been doing hair legally, being licensed for 3 years. And so I was in the school teaching, and I didn't know much, but I always feel, because I teach That's what I really like look at myself now as a teacher within my industry. And I always say you learn the most when you teach it. Because if you're able to like consume something and then be able to regurgitate it back out and make it like become completely clear to the person you're teaching it to, you know, it means you really kind of have this understanding of what that is and so forth. So I was working out on what they call the clinic floor, which is where all the students would just take clients and be cutting hair, coloring hair, and so forth. And that was the easiest thing for me to identify with because I was coming from a basic salon environment. And then I remember, yeah, it was like a Friday. My dad came to me, hey, one of the teachers, I think he lost one of the teachers, I need you to teach this hair color class starting Monday or Tuesday, because it was a Tuesday through Saturday program. I'm like, great, I've never taught in a classroom, I'm not even a strong hair colorist at that time. So I remember I went home and I grabbed all the curriculum, the books, and I just started like pounding out notes and whatnot. And I had never any formal training on teaching. And Tuesday morning, I show up into a hair color classroom, and I just began teaching hair color. So I can say I was definitely thrown to the wolves, and it was a trial by fire thing. Thanks, Daddy's right over here. I appreciate that. But you know, it challenged me, and it made me grow, and it began to just like, it made me see a whole different side of the industry, which was the educational aspect of what I do. And that just really began to open my mind to education, and I think basic like self-growth in general, about just constantly, I think that's really the point in my life where I remember I always began to look for something that was always going to challenge me, whether it was in my industry or not in my industry, that was going to make me like step out of my box and make me a little uncomfortable, like this morning, make me sweat a little bit, make the butterflies roll, because that's when you learn. And that's really when you begin to evolve. And that's when you really begin to go beyond, if you will. Yeah. Rebecca said, can you tie the word in? Like, absolutely. I got it a couple of times. So I was teaching in the school while we were in the creation of the salon. So, you know, coming back to Sacramento, I did a little research and I saw what Sacramento had to offer for a salon. This was back in like the late 90s, 99 at this point. And, you know, it was lacking something what I considered as raw, minimal, very modern in design. And it lacked like this kind of culture, you know, if you will. And the culture I speak to, like you walk into the salon and it's got this really kind of like cool experience and this identity of a team and everybody kind of like cohesively working together as a collective. So we created the salon, and the first space was on 30th and J Street for about 13 years, and it was sat right next to Lyons restaurant. And there used to be this really cool record store next door called Manic Music, which was really great for me, loving music, because I'd get a tip and I'd go spend it, you know, and buy music. And I had a really great music collection at that time in my life. And I started the salon. It was a very small space, but it was myself as one sole stylist, and then I just began bringing in assistants and apprentices, or the assistants, but they're people fresh out of school that were looking to kind of continue the path of education. And so the assistant program would run anywhere from about a year to a year and a half long. And I've got one of my very early assistants with me today, who's always been one to challenge me, which has been great. And I've just began to like slowly grow and develop a team. Now, if you ask a 23-year-old, I thought like at 23 and I'm opening this salon, I'm like, shit, by the time sorry, kids have earphones. By the time I'm 30, I'm gonna be like living the life of luxury, you know. Yeah. Well, I'm 41 now and I'm still like working hard at it and kicks my ass every day. But it's good, but yeah, because you don't forget the turnover, if you will. You bring somebody in, you train them up, they fall out of the program, you get them to stick, they move with you. I've been very, very lucky because I think the culture that we've developed within that space, that people come into the space and they stay with me. And they stay with me because I treat people as humans, for one, and I feel that to be very important. And I look at all of my people that I work with, we're a team. We're all eye to eye. I don't care if I'm your boss, you know what I mean? I try to have a conversation with you and we speak eye to eye. as well as I try to offer them as many growth opportunities as possible to continually like evolve within their career path. And the little bit of insight that I have on life, whether it's, different aspects of life, I try to offer that out. So I try to be a friend, and in my industry, it's really not seen, or it's not heard of in like a salon space, if you will. So we've got the salon. Yeah, that's great. And going back on, so we've got the salon, 13 years, J Street. We closed it down because we have this really beautiful school facility out in North Natomas by the original Kings Arena. There's 3 of them. So it was right across the street from the first one. And we expanded out that school facility about 4 years ago, I think I may have been. And I'm in now business with my dad, and I've got 2 brothers. I'm the creative, and I've got an older brother who is our CEO, and I got a little brother who's our CFO. So, we've got a really nice mix, and if we all kind of like do what we're said to do, it's a really like beautiful formula, keeping my train of thought, moving forward. Check my time. So good. All right, so doing good. So we got the school facility. So I remember sitting around and we were talking about expanding the school. And they're like, what would you like to see with this expansion? We're like, well, we were at like 23,000 square feet is how big the space was. And we were adding on another 20,000 square feet. So it's going to become a 43,000 square foot kind of educational Disneyland is what I like to call it. I said, we've got this platform, we've got like this lower level of education, we've got this salon. I would really like to somehow encapsulate in a higher level of learning, because I've always been an educator, but I call myself, I'm a lifelong learner as well as a lifelong like educator. I love learning, and I still, after 22 years in the industry, take as many classes as I possibly can. And that's just about being humble, because I see a lot of people within my industry where they don't want to take themselves out and put themselves into a classroom type of environment because they may see what they really know or don't know, if you will, or they may not want to have to stand next to their competitor and to show them really how good their skills are. You notice I have a comb in my hand because this is what makes me feel comfortable. Because when I teach, there's generally a head in front of me, and I'm, doing things, and this is like a sense of security for me. So I wanted to create this environment for education, for postgraduates to come back and to learn from. And the idea behind it was, I wanted to create something that was more of an independent educational facility. So in my industry, if you venture out and you want to go get educated above and beyond, you have to go to an academy, and it would be like, I'll use the name Vidal Sassoon. We all know Vidal Sassoon's name, right? You would go to the Sassoon Academy and you would learn that methodology. Yeah? Or you would go to Tony and Guy, because that might be another name a lot of you know, and you would learn the Tony and Guy kind of methodology. Yeah? So I wanted to create a space where under this one roof, we could bring in artists and have them teach their methodology, their philosophy, and depending on the calendar, that the education would always be evolving and always is kind of going down a different path depending on the artist that's teaching there. And there's nothing like this type of platform in the world today, still, in this 3 years young at this point, 4 years young at this point. And it goes back to because my industry is, there's a lot of ego, and there's a lot of ego driven, if you will, and I think it's going to change and it's going to evolve, and I think we've honestly have began to change the pace and began to set a new trend within it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the path in the next like 5 to 10 years. But with this, sitting around this table, I said, in doing this, I said, what my grandfather and his brother started, because the school is 71 years old. My grandfather and his brother started. They were barbers from the Midwest. They came out to California to open these schools, and they definitely like created something. And when my mom and my dad ran it, they came in and they definitely put their own stamp on it, by introducing in new programs, getting laws passed, being very like in depth within the legislator and this kind of like the legalities behind the board and so forth. And for my brothers and I to take it and move it on to the third generation, I said, I want to have our own stamp. I just don't want to do like you're here, and just continue down the path and to live life just easily. So I said, this is one idea that I would like to kind of run with. And I would like to take the name Federico and have it to be an internationally recognized name. And I just remember like my brother's like, oh my God, let's just worry about like, the state or the nation. I'm like, no. And they're like, well, maybe one day. So within this platform we've created, Federico Advanced, 3 years later, we've got international recognition, I will say. We've got the world's best hairdressers and educators from Europe, from all over Europe, all over North America, coming in, sharing, teaching, and helping elevate the craft of hairdressing within our community of Sacramento. I know, it's Sacramento. It lives right here. Because something like this should really live like in New York or Los Angeles, yeah? But it doesn't need to at this point because of social media. And that actually goes on to my next slide. I'm like really like, yeah. So I haven't even hit on that guy. We'll get back to him. Remember that photo. So this is just a bit of my work. My work, I like things that are a little bit more raw, a little bit more avant-garde, a little edgy, and things that are suitable and beautiful to the individual. I believe that is key. Suitability is always key, and it leads the way within my work and what I generally try to teach. Always important. Social media handles, this is where you can find me, Instagram, all the companies, so forth. We'll keep it, sorry. There we go. And this brings me back into where I should be going, right here. Okay. So within this path of Federico Advanced, I definitely believe this quote is huge to me because I've been in that dark room, and then all of a sudden that dark room, it never turns white. It begins to go gray. And then that gray begins to transcend into something a little bit brighter and whiter. But education is definitely like the key to continually moving forward and pushing yourself like just beyond what you're doing all day and every day. And I'm a firm believer that I'm not speaking of my industry alone, I'm just kind of speaking in life as general. Yeah? And education can come from anything. And it doesn't have to be from like, well, I took a haircutting class and now I'm a better haircutter. It could be like just challenging yourself to learn something new, to go above and beyond what you typically do all day, every day, and just to kind of expand your mind, yeah? Because when you're expanding your mind, you can always take that fuel and that fire back and put it back into what you do all day and every day, yeah? So, the art kid, remember the art kid? The art kid, there we go. I had this funny story, and this was supposed to be my icebreaker, and it'll happen now midway through it. But I had this horrible nightmare 2 nights ago, and it was about this. I was told to be here at 7:45 in the morning. I walk in at 9 o'clock. Everybody's sitting already. I came from a yoga class because I try to practice, and I'm sweaty, just like drenched, and my mom and my dad are in the crowd, which is cool because my mom's been deceased for 12 years, so whenever she appears in a dream, it's always a good thing. Okay, water break. And she had a change of clothes for me. It was a big pair of oversized sweatpants and a Crocker Riverside Elementary School sweatshirt. Rebecca introduces me. I remember I'm standing off to the side over here. I come up. As soon as I come up, half of the room exits out. I'm like, holy shit. And I'm just like, okay. I'm like, I got to continue on with this. There's the other half of the room is here, and I've got to, I got to do them right. So I start talking. And then within 5 minutes, another third of the room exits out. I'm like, okay. So as I continue up my talk, people are just beginning to trickle out and trickle out and trickle out. And I wake up, I'm like, God, the dream was, it was like so vivid still, you know. And it was a few days ago, but it was just like I woke up and it's just, so I'm like, what is that about? And it really has to do with, I'm off my slides, but as a creative, you know, in growing up, I never really recognized myself or looked at myself as being artistic or as a creative. I was always one of those kids where I remember my cousin Brian, we'd be drawing next to each other, and I'd look at his paper and I'd look at mine, and I'd crumple it up and throw it. Like, this kid's like just a great artist, you know, throw it away. From there, it went into music. I started playing music, played bass guitar. I played with some really great musicians, and they were like really good. I'm like, God, I suck, you know? I'm like, you know, but whatever, I'm not artistic, I'm not creative. And it still happens today. Like, you ask me, I'm like, am I creative, am I artistic? Nah. Because the people I surround myself with, the people that I aspire to be like, are like, you know, they're here. And then they say, dude, you're so creative, like with what you're doing and the way you think and the way you're trying to take the industry, and you're like breaking down these new boundaries, and you've created a whole new path. It's like you've taken the industry and you've completely like shooken it up and just dumped it upside down, because something that was like once so corporate and corporately driven, you, some kid from Sacramento, through like bringing an artist and social media, has just completely like, and these companies don't know what to do with like what you're doing at this point, because you've completely broken the mold. And like, well, that's cool. Like, but how about my haircut? You know? Really, because that's, you know. So, but, yeah, and that goes back to that dream, is because I still like in that dream, it's like I just feel like I'm not good enough. You know, it's like that inner struggle of always identifying with like, is your work good enough, or is, you know, are you able? Should you be where you're at? Like, why should I be here, standing here today? I'm looking throughout the room, and I see a lot of like really like seasoned professionals in all different careers, people that I look up to, like, you should be up here, you should be leading this, because you've done some really cool shit. It's my little girl's over here, and she's got earphones in, so I'm good. And I keep looking at her as like my support. She's like paying no mind, but that's all right. So, this slide was supposed to go with, you know, my sitting around the boardroom table. Yeah, because, you know, I'm a big dreamer. And as long as I can kind of take my dreams and I can begin to envision them out. And, you know, I've always been one where, like, I'll sit on something and I'll, like, you know, just, is it pontificate? Is that the word? My wife? Yeah, kill me on it. I'm sit on an idea. And I've been lucky enough where if I sit on an idea, think it and think it and think it, it'll generally make it happen. I'm not going to refer back to that book, you know what I mean? Because I'm not you may have read that book, The Secret. I'm not one of those whatever. But it's like, I believe that if you like envision something, if you just really kind of like put it in your head where you want to go and where you want to be, you can begin to kind of put yourself on that path. Yeah? And you just always have to like kind of challenge yourself and just always push yourself. You know, there was a quote that I heard last night, and it's a really good one. And it's, when you act, you learn something. Okay? When you act, you learn something, and from that, it's going to inform you on what you should do next within your next action. Yeah? So when you act, you learn something. So what that means is you got to get out and you've got to act. You've got to do something different. And you've got to continually push. Because if you're just running down the road of complacency, or just, you know, punching the clock in and out, whatever it might be, that's just going to be monotonous. And that's going to be your life. So you've got to do something that's going to shake things up within you. And when you begin feeling, you know, just like, oh, life's a little bit smooth, please step out, find something to completely make you just feel awkward and weird. Yeah? And just to like begin to shake it up, because that's what's going to take you down the next path. And that's that's the journey of life. Yeah? Really. Otherwise, like, why are we living? What are you doing? Are you living or are you existing? You guys all know these things. These are not new, like, you know. This is my personal mantra, yeah, if you will, through life. It's evolve or dissolve. So if you ever want to see anything I do through that hashtag, evolve or dissolve, you can always find like what I'm doing in life. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, and that just goes right back to what I was saying. If you're not evolving, generally, I feel like you're just kind of dissolving, yeah? So constantly push, constantly just like surround yourself with people that aspire you, that inspire you, and that you strive to be like, yeah? And it doesn't have to be like higher ups. Like for one, it's my team that I work with all day, every day in the salon. They inspire me because they are all like-minded individuals, but they're all individuals where they all bring something completely different to the plate. And I think that's what makes it really I think that's like the strength of the culture of my salon space and so forth. And daily they feed me, yeah, whether they know it or not. And they keep me going, and they keep pushing me. And then I've got some higher ups, like the people that I want to strive to run with as well, that challenge me. I see their work and I'm like, wow, man, that just blows my mind. I gotta push myself harder. I gotta break down. I gotta step out of my box and get outside of that comfort zone. I hope that's not my phone. And it goes back down to, and this is something that I gotta bring us all back in and make it somewhat tangible for everybody in the room. And this one is how do you justify? And that's how do you justify your worth? Okay, and that worth can be a dollar amount, or it can be just your worth of living. And I don't want to say your worth of living because we're all worthy of living on this earth, but just what are you doing to justify what you're doing all day, every day? Now let's talk about, the be all end all. We need some money coming in, right? So as a creative, I think it's always one of those things that's really hard. How do I justify, I'm going to speak on my terms, how do I justify how much I can charge for a haircut? Yeah, and I'll ask my team the same thing. Somebody comes to me, hey, I want to raise my prices. Cool, what have you done lately? Well, what do you mean, what have I done lately? Well, what kind of education have you done? What have you done to take yourself where you've been to where you feel like you should be going? Yeah, I don't raise your prices just because, the year's gone by and you've done nothing new. You know what I mean? What is it that you've done that's going to justify, right? A shift, a change to go from A to B. Because I think as a creative, early on, it's very cool to be the starving artist, but the starving artist gig gets really boring after a while because you're like, God, I want to buy a house. I want to have a family. I got kids. I got to support my kids. You know what I mean? I'm down this path. So how do I justify going from a $50 haircut to a $115 haircut or whatever it might be? What do I do to continually push and then make those strides? How do I justify being here? What have I done? It took me a while to swallow. Rebecca emailed me, and I also I'm gonna sit on that email for a while. She emailed, did you get that email? Yeah, I got it. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to justify that inner creative struggle. Yeah. So justifying your worth. That's just something that you just sit with it and just kind of always reflect back on it. Yeah. I'm getting close. Do things that feed your soul, not your ego, and you'll be happy. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at, definitely today, and where I've been. And I've had to make some shifts within what I do in order to really get there. So let me just peek down at my notes. It's so funny. I rewrote these notes out 3 or 4 times, and as I'm writing, and the people around me, they're like, yeah, I'm right. I'm like, it's so funny. I'm writing these out because I'm going to completely just go off of them, and that's exactly what I did. Yeah. So doing things that are obviously going to feed your soul, really, it's just kind of living your own life. Yeah. Don't live your life for somebody else. So figure out what it is that's going to make you happy and go after it. It's never too late. And you can always hit the reset button in your life. Nobody said you can't hit the reset button. Yeah, you can reset yourself as many times as you want. It's your life, you know? Go down the path that you want to go down to. Just as you're going down and you're making that journey, ultimately, just make sure that you're like happy within. Because that's what it's like really about. Yeah? The ego is the shit. Yeah? Just be happy. Ego, it's an interesting one. Because ego can just come through confidence. Yeah? So just be confident in who you are and what you're doing. And that can be presented as an ego, but you don't need to like, I'm here. I'm 22 years in. I've traveled the world teaching hairdressing. Just eye to eye with people. You know what I mean? Just speak confidently with people and be who you are and just know your path and just continue down it. And if you don't like it, reset or look down the other path. The door is never closed. And this is the best one. And I'm going to be closing it up in a second. But this gentleman has always been one of my main inspirations, Mr. David Bowie. And I think David Bowie is the identity of beyond, from what he's done within his life, or he did within his life, from music to film to just culture shifting and stepping out of the box and always like shaking things up. Yeah, that's one that I've always identified with. And if I ever feel a little bit stale, always throw on a little Bowie. I'll pick up a book and I'll flip through, kind of his lifelong career and just kind of begin to feed the mind. So, and that's kind of like where I'm at right now. I've got this, and I don't know where I am going. I've got these different accomplishments that I've managed to hit, and I've created at 41. And the last thing would be I've got in the last couple of months, I've got a couple really big offers to me, and they're like, honestly, one of them is like, if I was ever able to do this, I could die a happy man. I could retire from my career. And in my industry, there's this really cool hair show. It's called Noise. And it's a very underground, raw kind of show. And it travels the world, and it's like a pop-up show. And it's kind of promoted like a rave, where it's like, we're going to be in London, we're going to be in Taipei, we're going to be in London, or Hong Kong, or whatever it might be. And they'll list down the artist, and then they won't tell you the date, or they'll give you a general idea of the weekend. They won't release the location or the time until day of, a few hours before. So you get yourself there if you want to. But I was asked to go do the show with my buddy Richard Ashforth, he's one of those guys where I'm like, I strive to be, he's like, hey, come to Taipei and do the show with me in July. And so for me, that's kind of like, I'm cool, I'm done. So, that like is a creative thing, is one that'll feed my soul for a very long time. And I thank you guys very, very much for your time, your patience, your energy. I hope I was able to leave you with something today, maybe a laugh at the least. I thank you, Rebecca. Yeah.